A starlit encounter. In the quiet solitude of the night, the Cerro Tololo Inter-American Observatory was alive with the soft hum of machinery and the occasional murmur of astronomers and technicians. Dr. Elliot Reed adjusted the focus on the telescope, peering into the depths of space, searching for the unusual signals that had disrupted his data for weeks now. Still chasing ghosts, Elliot? Dr. Marco Alvarez, a fellow astronomer, walked up with 2 steaming cups of coffee in hand. Elliot didn't take his eye away from the eyepiece. It's not a ghost if it keeps showing up in the same place, Marco. It's more like a puzzle that's begging to be solved. Marco handed him a cup and glanced at the monitor, displaying clusters of stars and data readings. Any luck tonight? Maybe. There's a pattern to the signal. It's almost rhythmic, like it's pulsing intentionally. Elliot took a sip of the coffee, feeling the warmth spread through him. Intentional? You mean like a signal? Marco raised his eyebrows, a mix of skepticism and intrigue on his face. Yes, exactly like a signal. And I think I've finally pinpointed its origin. Elliot turned to his computer, pulling up a series of coordinates. Right there. That's where we need to look. Marco peered at the screen, his interest piqued. That's near the Epsilon Eridani system. It's relatively close in cosmic terms. Should we redirect the larger array to get a better look? I already submitted the request. We should be moving the array within the hour. Elliot's voice held a hint of excitement that he usually reserved for moments like this, on the cusp of discovery. As they waited for the array to reposition, the air around them buzzed with anticipation. Marco broke the silence. Imagine if it's really someone trying to contact us. After all these years of us listening to the stars. Elliot laughed softly. I'd be happy with any definitive proof that we're not alone in this universe, even if it's just an echo. The monitors began to beep, signaling the alignment of a larger array with Elliot's coordinates. Both men fixed their eyes on the screen as the first of the enhanced data streamed in. Look at that. It's clearer now. See how it peaks at regular intervals. Elliot's finger traced the graph that sprawled across the screen. Marco nodded, his earlier skepticism giving way to a researcher's curiosity. It's almost musical. Have you considered it might be a natural phenomenon? Something we haven't encountered before. Before Elliot could answer, the screen flickered, and a new set of signals began to appear. They were different, structured in a way that natural cosmic noises never were. That's no natural phenomenon, Marco. That's someone knocking on the door of the cosmos, and we just found their doorstep. The night air was pierced by a sudden flare of light from above. Both men stepped out of the observatory, their eyes drawn upward as a streak of brilliant white light cut across the sky, descending towards the nearby hills. Did that just come from Epsilon Eridani's direction? Marco asked, his voice a mixture of excitement and disbelief. Elliot didn't respond. He was already grabbing his coat and keys. Come on, we have to get there. Tonight might just change everything. As they drove towards the landing site, the early morning sky began to brighten with the first hints of dawn. The unknown and the unimaginable lay just ahead, promising a meeting that could bridge worlds and change their understanding of the universe forever. This night was just the beginning. Chapter 2, First Contact. The rugged terrain of the nearby hills was bathed in the early morning light as Elliot and Marco approached the site when mysterious light had landed. Their truck bumped along the uneven path, each jolt bringing them closer to what could be the most significant discovery of their careers. Are you sure this is the right place? Marco asked, gripping the dashboard as the truck lurched over a particularly large rock. Elliot, eyes fixed on the GPS coordinates displayed on his tablet, nodded. We're almost there. It should be just over that ridge. As they crested the hill, they caught sight of something extraordinary. There, in a small clearing surrounded by trees, was a craft unlike any they had ever seen. It was sleek and metallic, with surfaces that seemed to shimmer with a light of their own. Wow, would you look at that? Marco whispered, his usual playful tone replaced by awe. Elliot parked the truck, and they approached cautiously. The craft was silent, and there was no movement around it. Hello. Elliot called out tentatively. Is anyone there? There was a moment of silence before a section of the craft shifted, opening like a flower to reveal a figure standing in the doorway. The being was tall, humanoid, but with skin that shimmered like the craft itself. I am Aliena, the alien said, stepping forward. Her voice was clear, and her eyes were intensely focused on them. I come in peace. Elliot and Marco exchanged a glance, Then Elliot stepped forward. I'm Dr. Elliot Reed, and this is Dr. Marco Alvarez. We're astronomers. We saw your arrival. Eliana nodded. I have traveled far to reach Earth. Your signals drew me here. Signals? You mean the pulses we detected? Elliot asked, his scientific curiosity piqued. Yes. They mirrored the patterns my people use to communicate across the stars, Eliana explained. She then looked around, taking in her surroundings with interest. I wish to learn about your world. May I explore it with you? Marco chuckled softly. Well, you've come to the right guides. But first, we should probably let our superiors know we've made contact. Eliana tilted her head slightly. Is that necessary? It's procedure, Elliot responded. But we can make it quick. Come, let's head back to the observatory. You can meet our team, and we can start making plans. The drive back was filled with questions from both sides. Eliana was curious about everything from the Earth's atmosphere to human culture, while Elliot and Marco were eager to learn about her technology and her world. Upon arrival at the observatory, they were met with a mixture of excitement and apprehension from the staff. Elliot introduced Eliana, and after some initial hesitancy, the team warmed up to the visitor from the stars. Let's start with a tour of the observatory, Elliot suggested. You'll see how we observe the universe. As they walked through the facility, Eliana observed the equipment and the working astronomers with keen interest. Your tools are different, yet similar to ours in purpose, she remarked. Yes, we're all trying to understand the universe, Marco said, showing her a detailed image of a distant galaxy on one of the monitors. I'm grateful for your openness, Eliana said, looking between Elliot and Marco. Many worlds fear what they do not understand. We're scientists, Elliot replied with a smile. Curiosity is what drives us. The chapter closes with Elliot, Marco, and Eliana planning their next steps. They decide to organize a series of exchanges, knowledge about technology and the cosmos from Eliana, and insights into Earth and human culture from Elliot and Marco. The foundation for profound and enlightening interstellar friendship is set against the backdrop of the observatory, symbolizing not only a meeting place of minds but also the dawning of a new era in human understanding. Chapter 3. Language of the Cosmos. Back at the Cerro Tololo Inter-American Observatory, the atmosphere was charged with an excited energy. Elliot, Marco, and Eliana sat around a large conference table strewn with various gadgets and linguistic textbooks. Elliot had brought an interactive tablet loaded with language learning apps, while Marco contributed a stack of cultural anthropology books. So, where do we begin? Marco asked, flipping through a book to a section on linguistic structures. Eliana responded with a gesture to the tablet. Your digital tools are intriguing. They may expedite our learning process. Elliot handed her the tablet, explaining its functions. As Eliana interacted with the touchscreen, her movements were precise, betraying a quick adaptability. Your technology is intuitive, she noted, then paused. I would like to share with you my language, Valerian. It's both spoken and telepathically conveyed through emotional resonance. Telepathic. Marco looked intrigued. How does that work? It involves emotional frequencies. I can teach you the basics, but full proficiency might be beyond human capability. Eliana's tone was apologetic yet hopeful. Let's start with the spoken part, then, Elliot suggested, activating the tablet's recording feature. Can you say something simple in Valerian? Eliana spoke a series of melodious phrases, the sounds flowing like a gentle river. Elliot repeated them with effort, causing Eliana to smile gently. Not bad, Elliot. With practice, you'll improve. Marco tried next, his pronunciation rougher, but he laughed off his mistakes. We'll get there. Now, let's hear you try some English phrases. Anything you want to say. Eliana thought for a moment, then spoke with careful clarity. I'm pleased to be here with you. Her accent was peculiar, lilting in unexpected places. Perfect. Marco cheered. You're a natural. Their session continued with a blend of laughter and learning. They took turns speaking phrases in each other's languages, using the tablet to record and playback for correction. After several hours, they took a break, stepping outside to enjoy the crisp air. They strolled around the observatory's grounds, with Eliana looking curiously at the native plant life. Elliot pointed to the Andean mountains in the distance. These are the Andes. They run along the western edge of South America. They are beautiful, Eliana remarked, her eyes scanning the horizon. and vastly different from the terrains of Vela. The conversation turned to Earth's natural beauty. Marco shared stories of other landscapes around the world, from the Sahara Desert to the forests of the Amazon. Eliana listened intently, then shared descriptions of Vela's landscapes, crystal lakes that sang with the winds and mountains that glowed with natural luminescence at night. Her descriptions painted a vivid picture that left Elliot and Marco in awe. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the observatory, Elliot brought out a small portable speaker. "Let's add some music to our cultural exchange." He played a variety of music, from classical to contemporary pop. Eliana was particularly taken by a Beethoven symphony. This is similar to Valerian harmony patterns. Music is a universal language, it seems. The evening ended with them back inside, enjoying cups of hot chocolate Marco had prepared. "To our new friendship and the sharing of our worlds," Marco toasted, raising his cup. Eliana raised hers in return, a warm smile spreading across her face. "To new languages and the harmony they bring." Elliot felt a profound sense of connection as he looked at his new friend and old colleague. Here, in this remote part of the Earth, they were making small but significant steps toward understanding not just another culture, but a whole new world. The night's conversation not only broadened their linguistic abilities, but also deepened their appreciation of the diverse beauty and complexity of the cosmos. Chapter 4: Revelations Under the Moon. After a few weeks of cultural exchanges and linguistic lessons, Eliana proposed an extraordinary idea during one of their late-night discussions in the observatory. "Elliot, Marco, would you like to see Earth from a different perspective?" "Different how?" Elliot asked, intrigued. "From orbit. I can take you aboard my craft. It's equipped for short journeys, and you'll see your world as I first saw it," Eliana explained, her eyes reflecting the stars visible through the dome of the observatory. Marco's eyes widened with excitement. "You mean go into space right now?" "If you are willing, yes." Elliot didn't hesitate. "Let's do it. What do we need to prepare?" "Just yourselves. My ship will take care of the rest," Eliana said as she led them outside to where her craft was hidden, still shimmering slightly under the moonlight. As they approached the sleek vessel, its door opened silently, revealing the interior illuminated by a soft, ambient light. The inside of the ship was more spacious than it appeared from the outside, furnished with seats that molded to their bodies as they sat down. "Strap yourselves in," Eliana instructed as she navigated the controls that seemed to respond to her touch and gestures. With a smooth ascent, the craft silently lifted off from the Earth. The experience of leaving the atmosphere was less dramatic than Elliot and Marco had anticipated, with no great shakes or roars, just a gentle pull away from the ground. As they reached the upper atmosphere, Earth's curvature came into view, the blue of the ocean striking against the backdrop of space. "It's beautiful," Marco managed to say, his usual chatter subdued by the awe-inspiring view. Elliot was equally captivated, watching as the sun's rays illuminated the planet. "It's a sight I've always imagined but never thought I'd see." Eliana smiled at their reactions. It is always profound to see one's world from the cosmos. As they orbited, Eliana shared stories of other planets and species she encountered in her travels. Many civilizations reach out to the stars, some out of curiosity, others out of necessity. Elliot, ever the scientist, was full of questions. "What kind of societies have you encountered? How do they manage their resources, their governments?" Eliana's responses painted a vivid tapestry of diverse planetary cultures. Some are peaceful, valuing knowledge and harmony above all. Others are more fragmented, with conflicts that remind me of your own history books. Marco, looking back towards Earth, seemed thoughtful. "Makes you realize how similar and yet how unique we all are, doesn't it?" "Yes," Eliana agreed. "The universe is vast, and life expresses itself in myriad forms. Yet there are common threads, like the pursuit of understanding and the desire for peace." As the Earth continued to rotate beneath them, Elliot considered their own planet's struggles and triumphs. Seeing it from up here, it's hard to imagine why we focus on our differences when there's so much to gain from our similarities. The discussion turned to philosophical reflections on humanity's place in the universe, with Eliana listening intently and occasionally providing insights from her own people's philosophies. Eventually, the craft began its descent back to Earth, the journey home feeling much shorter than the ascent. When they landed back at the observatory, the first light of dawn was cresting the horizon. Stepping out of the craft, Marco stretched and sighed. "That was one of the most incredible experiences of my life." "Thank you, Eliana." Elliot nodded in agreement, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. This puts everything into perspective. Our work, our goals, there's so much more out there. Eliana's gaze was warm as she looked at them both. And now you have seen as I have seen. Perhaps together we can find new ways to explore not only the stars but also how we can be part of a larger community. As they walked back to the observatory, the sky now brightening with the morning, the bond between the three of them was stronger than ever, united by a shared vision of exploring the vast, beautiful cosmos. Chapter 5: Intimate Discoveries. Several weeks into Eliana's visit, the boundaries between teacher and student began to blur, as each exchange between her, Elliot, and Marco led to deeper insights, not just about their worlds, but also about each other. One afternoon, as they were examining the bioecological systems Eliana had brought from Vela, Elliot noticed how Eliana's fascination with human touch seemed to pique her curiosity. "You always seem so intrigued by our physical interactions," Elliot remarked, passing her a sample under the microscope. Eliana looked up from the lens, her gaze thoughtful. "Touch among my people is not just physical. It's an exchange of energy, emotions. But here it's different, more tangible, simple yet complex. Humans need touch. It connects us," Marco added, coming over with more samples. "You're welcome to join in." A handshake, a pat on the back, it's all friendly. With a nod, Eliana extended her hand towards Elliot, who took it gently. The contact was simple, but visibly stirred a mutual curiosity. "It's warm," she noted, her voice soft. Elliot smiled, a bit awkwardly, as they continued to hold hands longer than customary for a handshake. "It's a human thing. Warmth often feels comforting." The moment lingered, then Marco clapped his hands, breaking the spell. "Why don't we show Eliana some of our other human interactions? Maybe visit a cultural festival? There's one in town this weekend." "That sounds like a perfect idea," Elliot agreed, still aware of the warmth where Eliana's hand had been. The festival was vibrant, filled with music, dancing, and booths of all kinds showcasing local crafts and foods. Eliana absorbed it all with wide-eyed wonder, her curiosity insatiable. As they walked through the bustling crowd, Eliana's hand brushed against Elliot's, and this time she took it deliberately. Elliot looked at her surprised, but didn't pull away. Instead, he welcomed the connection, curious about her willingness to explore this human gesture. "You seem very at ease with our customs now," Elliot commented as they stopped to watch a group of dancers. "I'm learning from the best," Eliana replied with a smile. "And I find I quite enjoy the simplicity and directness of human touch." They continued to explore the festival, hands joined, occasionally stopping to try foods or interact with the vendors. Marco, ever the extrovert, led the charge, introducing Eliana as a visiting scholar interested in human cultures, which wasn't far from the truth. As the evening grew darker, the three found themselves sitting on a small hillside away from the main crowd, watching fireworks light up the sky. Eliana's hand was still in Elliot's, her head tilted back in awe. "The lights," she whispered. "They look like stars falling to earth. They're beautiful, aren't they?" Elliot said, his voice low, almost reflective. "Yes, very much so." Eliana turned to look at him, her eyes bright. "Elliot, I have a question. The emotions humans feel during such displays, amazement, joy, sadness, do you feel them now?" Elliot met her gaze, realizing the depth of her question. "I do. It's a mix of joy and a bit of melancholy. It's ephemeral, like the fireworks. Beautiful while it lasts, but sad when it's gone. I feel it too through you," she admitted, squeezing his hand gently. The night ended with them returning to the observatory, the silence comfortable and reflective. As they said goodnight, Eliana hugged Elliot briefly, a gesture she'd learned from observing others. Elliot went to bed that night feeling a convergence of emotions, excitement for the scientific discoveries they'd made, but also a deep, uncharted connection with Eliana. The touch, the shared experiences, and the emotional exchanges had woven a complex tapestry of human and Valerian interactions, marking the beginning of a profound exploration not just of the stars, but of themselves. Chapter 6: A Love Written in the Stars. Over the following weeks, Elliot and Eliana found themselves increasingly drawn to one another, their bond deepening through shared experiences and long conversations under the starlit skies. One evening, as they were reviewing data from their latest observational study, Eliana turned to Elliot with a contemplative look. "Elliot, I have been thinking about human relationships," she began, her voice soft yet curious. "The emotional connections you form, are they always born from long periods of interaction, or can they happen swiftly, unexpectedly?" Elliot looked up from the computer screen, caught slightly off guard by her question. Both, actually. Sometimes people just click right away. Other times it grows slowly. Why do you ask? I think I am experiencing the former, Eliana confessed, her eyes searching his. With you. Elliot's heart skipped a beat. He had felt the growing closeness between them, but hadn't dared to name it until now. Eliana, I feel the same way. Their admission hung in the air for a moment before Elliot reached across the table, taking her hand. Eliana's fingers curled around his, a smile spreading across her face. May I try something? She asked tentatively. A Valerian gesture of affection? Of course, Elliot responded, intrigued. Eliana stood, guiding Elliot to do the same. She placed her hands on his cheeks, her touch gentle. Then, closing her eyes, she leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to his forehead. It was a moment of pure connection, transcending words and worlds. Elliot, moved by the gesture, wrapped his arms around her, pulling her into a gentle embrace. This is a human gesture, he murmured, one of affection and comfort. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Marco entered the room, stopping short when he saw them. Clearing his throat, he said, Am I interrupting? Elliot and Eliana separated, but not quickly enough to hide their smiles. Not at all, Marco, Elliot replied, his voice steady despite his racing heart. What's up? Just came to say the Northern Array is back online. We can continue with the night's observations, Marco said, his eyes twinkling with unspoken understanding. Great, we'll be right there, Elliot said. He turned to Eliana, shall we? Let us proceed, she agreed, her usual formal tone softened by the evening's revelations. As the three of them walked to the observatory's main control room, the stars above seemed to shine a bit brighter. They spent the night charting stars and discussing constellations, but the data was not the only thing being explored. Later, as Marco excused himself to retire early, Elliot and Eliana remained, alone under the vastness of the cosmos. They talked about everything and nothing, from the mysteries of the universe to dreams of the future. Elliot, what happens when my mission here is complete? Eliana asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. We'll figure it out together, Elliot assured her, squeezing her hand. There's still so much to explore, both out there and between us. Eliana nodded, looking up at the stars. A love written in the stars, she whispered, echoing the phrase that had become a promise of hope and discovery between them. Yes, Elliot agreed, his voice full of emotion. A love written in the stars. As they turned their gaze back to the heavens, mapping out new celestial wonders, their shared journey into the unknown continued, guided by the light of the stars and the warmth of their newfound love. Chapter 7. Echoes of the Heart. Several months had passed since Eliana's arrival on Earth, and her time with Elliot had transformed from scientific collaboration to something deeply personal. One chilly evening, as they sat in the observatory's small lounge after a long day of data analysis, Eliana broached a subject they had both been avoiding. Elliot, we need to discuss the future, she started, her voice steady but her eyes revealing a hint of sadness. My mission here is nearing its end. Elliot looked up, his face tense with emotion. I know, he replied quietly. I've been thinking about that a lot. What happens next for us? Eliana took a deep breath. My people expect me to return, to share what I have learned. But, she paused, searching his eyes. My heart is conflicted. Elliot reached for her hand, holding it between his. Is there a way you could stay? Or maybe I could come with you. It's not that simple, Eliana sighed. My world is not easy to reach, and the journey back is complicated. And for you to leave Earth. I do it, Elliot interrupted, his decision clear. If it's a choice between our worlds, I choose us. Eliana smiled, touched by his declaration, yet the weight of their situation remained. I need to discuss this with my council. There may be protocols that we can invoke for extended missions, or new ones. Let's do that then, Elliot suggested. Let's find a way to make this work. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. Marco peeked in, a sheepish look on his face. Sorry to interrupt, but we have an issue with the Southern Array that needs attention. Elliot nodded. We'll be right out, Marco. As they joined Marco outside, the problem with the array turned out to be a minor one, quickly resolved. However, the break allowed them to shift their focus from the heavy emotional discussion, giving each a moment to breathe. After the repair, Marco, sensing the tension had lifted slightly, suggested, Why don't we grab some dinner in town? My treat. That sounds like a wonderful idea, Eliana agreed, grateful for the distraction. At the local diner, the trio shared a light meal, the conversation veering towards lighter topics. Marco told stories of his travels, making Eliana laugh with his impressions of the various places he'd visited. Elliot watched them, feeling a mix of gratitude and melancholy. As they walked back to their car, the sky clear and stars bright, Marco clapped Elliot on the back. "Whatever you decide, Elliot, I'm here for you, man." "Both of you." "Thanks, Marco," Elliot replied, feeling reassured by his friend's support. Once back at the observatory, Elliot and Eliana returned to their earlier conversation. "I think we should prepare a proposal," Elliot said, his voice determined. "Present it to your council. Explain what we've found here together, and what we could achieve with more time." Eliana nodded. "I will contact them first thing tomorrow. I believe they will see the value in what we have here. And I'll start looking into what I would need to do to travel with you if it comes to that," Elliot added. They spent the rest of the night planning, discussing every possible outcome, every potential hurdle. Their commitment to each other and their shared mission of exploration and understanding only grew stronger with each scenario they envisioned. As dawn approached, they stood together, watching the sunrise. "No matter what happens," Elliot said, turning to look at Eliana, "I'm glad for every moment we've had." Eliana leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "As am I, Elliot. As am I." In that moment, the challenges ahead seemed surmountable, the distance between worlds bridgeable. They had each other, and with that, they had a reason to find a way forward, echoing the sentiments of their hearts under the watchful gaze of the cosmos. Chapter 8: Beyond the Horizon. The weeks leading up to Eliana's scheduled departure were filled with a flurry of preparations and communications with her home planet. Elliot and Eliana worked closely together, drafting their proposal for her council, advocating for an extended mission on Earth, or the possibility of Elliot accompanying her back to Vela. On the eve of the council's decision, Elliot and Eliana sat in the observatory's main control room, a map of the stars spread out before them. The air was thick with anticipation, the weight of the impending decision hanging over them. "Whatever the council decides," Elliot said, trying to keep his voice steady, "I want you to know how much you mean to me." Eliana reached across the table, her hand covering his. "I know, Elliot. I feel the same. No matter where we are, that will not change." Just then, the communication console beeped, a signal that a transmission from Vela was incoming. They both tensed, watching as the screen flickered to life, revealing the visage of a Valerian elder. "Elliot, Marco." Eliana greeted nervously. "Greetings, Eliana and Dr. Reed," the elder spoke, his voice calm but authoritative. "We have reviewed your proposal and the knowledge you have shared from your time on Earth." Elliot held his breath, squeezing Eliana's hand under the table. The elder continued, "It is clear that your mission has not only been successful, but has also uncovered potential for deeper understanding and collaboration. Therefore, we have decided to extend your mission on Earth for another cycle. Additionally, we are prepared to invite Dr. Reed to Vela, should he choose, under the interspecies exchange program." Elliot's heart leapt, a surge of relief and excitement washing over him. "Thank you," he managed to say, his voice choked with emotion. Eliana smiled warmly, her relief evident. "Thank you, Elder. We are grateful for your trust and support." After the call ended, Elliot and Eliana embraced, a mix of joy and disbelief in their embrace. "We did it," Elliot whispered, his voice full of wonder. "We did," Eliana agreed, pulling back to look at him. "Are you ready for this, Elliot? Vela is very different from Earth." "I'm more than ready," Elliot replied with a determined nod. "As long as we're together, I'm ready for anything." They spent the night making plans, discussing what Elliot would need for his journey to Vela. Eliana described her world in detail, from its glowing mountains to its harmonic seas, trying to prepare him for the wonders and challenges ahead. The following days were a whirlwind as Elliot prepared for his journey. Marco helped him pack, making light of the situation with jokes and quips, but his eyes betrayed his concern for his friend. "You make sure to send me pictures, or better yet, some alien souvenirs," Marco said as he clasped Elliot's shoulder. "I will," Elliot promised, giving his friend a tight hug. "Take care of this place while I'm gone." "I always do," Marco replied, his smile bittersweet. The day of departure arrived swiftly. The observatory staff gathered to bid farewell to Elliot, their expression a mix of excitement and sadness. Eliana stood by his side, her hand firmly in his as they approached her craft. Before boarding, Elliot looked back one last time, his gaze sweeping over the familiar landscape, the faces of his colleagues, and the observatory that had been his second home. With a deep breath, he turned, stepping into the craft that would take him beyond the horizon. As the doors closed behind him, Elliot turned to Aliana, his future shining brightly in his eyes. "Let's go find out what's written in the stars for us." Aliana smiled, her hands squeezing his as the craft lifted off, leaving Earth behind. Together, they headed toward new skies, new worlds, and new possibilities.